Imagine a world where wars are fought but ordinary people, like doctors, farmers, and children, are kept safe from the direct impact of hostilities. It sounds like a difficult task, doesn't it? Non-combatants are protected in armed conflict primarily through the foundational principles and detailed rules of international humanitarian law, often referred to as the laws of armed conflict. This body of law establishes clear distinctions between those who fight and those who do not, granting specific protections to the latter. The core mechanism behind this protection is the principle of distinction, which mandates that parties to a conflict must always distinguish between combatants and civilians, and between military objectives and civilian objects. This means that attacks may only be directed against combatants and military objectives. Additionally, the principle of proportionality requires that, even if a military objective is targeted, the anticipated civilian harm must not be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage expected. International humanitarian law also includes specific provisions within the Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols that safeguard specific categories of non-combatants such as the wounded, the sick, shipwrecked persons, medical and religious personnel, and humanitarian aid workers. These rules are universally accepted, reflecting fundamental humanitarian concerns. For those involved in or observing armed conflicts, understanding these rules means recognizing that direct attacks against civilians are prohibited, and civilian infrastructure like homes, schools, and hospitals are generally protected unless they are being used for military purposes. It also means that precautions must be taken in attack to minimize incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, and damage to civilian objects. Commanders and fighters are obliged to choose means and methods of warfare that avoid, or at least minimize civilian casualties. An interesting nuance of international humanitarian law is the concept of a protected person, which grants specific legal status and entitlements under the Fourth Geneva Convention to civilians in the hands of an adverse party. This offers a higher degree of protection than the general non-combatant status, covering aspects from humane treatment to due process. It highlights a comprehensive legal framework aimed at limiting the suffering caused by war. Ultimately, the protection of non-combatants hinges on the universal adherence to these well-established principles and legal frameworks, ensuring that even in the chaos of conflict, humanity's fundamental values of dignity and care for the vulnerable are upheld, thereby minimizing the devastating impact of war on civilian populations.